Is the missing piece to this lineup right in front of us in Matt Shaw? Let's talk about it.
You are Locked On Cubs, your daily Chicago Cubs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Cubs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Sam Olbert. I'm a lifelong fan, taking my passion into a discussion with you on all things Cubs. Thanks for being part of the show and making Locked On Cubs your first listen today. And the best way you can help us grow the show is to listen every day, like the video, and comment anything below. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Happy Friday, everybody. We're going to talk about Matt Shaw a little bit later on for our feature today. But I want you guys to just close your eyes for a second and envision this scenario. Whether you're younger or older, you're back in high school or you're going into high school, and you feel like you're trying out for a team, let's say baseball, as a freshman, and you know you're good enough to be on the A team. You know you are, but they put you on the B team, and it frustrates you, and you keep complaining about it. You tell your friends, your family every day, I should be on the A team. I should be on the A team. And at some point, you just have to play on the B team and move on and hope for the best and do what you need to do. That's what I feel like covering the Cubs is like right now. We should be covering an A team. We should be covering a team that's going after Juan Soto. We should be covering a team that has an endless financial budget situation where we can go over not even the first luxury tax threshold, but maybe the second, and competing with the big boys. But we could complain about it and talk about it, every day. We could just do that the whole offseason. But, we all love this team. And despite what's going on and despite the fact that it looks like they're not going to be big spenders, we still all want them to win. And we have to start talking about the best paths to do that. And before I want to preface the Matt Shaw topic by talking about this idea of the two timeline theory that the Cubs may, execute or try and execute this year. And what that means, it's very simple. That just means that the Cubs are going to be trying to have a veteran group of guys that we all know that are trying to win now. The Cubs are trying to win now. They're going to try and win the Central. They're going to try and make the postseason. But at the same time, they're going to be developing young players. And when you develop young players, as we saw last year with PCA, you're going to most of the time have to deal with the growing pains that come with that, right? And so the question is can you develop young players and be patient and also win now at the same time? And the short answer is yes. And there's two different ways you can do it. The easiest way, and all paths lead to this. Every time we do a show, every time we do a topic, it always leads to this. You need a star player. You need a star to increase the margin of error. So when these young guys go through those growing pains, it doesn't stick out as much. For example, in 2024, PCA and Amaya, they went through some real growing pains that young players are going to go through in May and June. That would not have stuck out as much. It wouldn't have been as big of a story. Hey, the 8-9 hitters are really, really, really struggling for the Cubs. If the 1 through 7 guys, if you had a few guys in there that were, during that 2-month stretch hit 315 with an OPS over 1,000, but the Cubs just don't have a guy like that. So for this two timeline thing to work, we hear Jed all the time talk about outperforming projections. Well, somebody either on this team or externally, if they bring in, is going to have to outperform the projection, or maybe hopefully they bring in somebody that just has the projection of being a star, but it doesn't look that way at the moment, where then you could increase the margin of error. For example, let's look at Baltimore was a team that I wanted to speak on, right? Last year, they had Jackson Holliday come up, the number one prospect in baseball. And it was really tough for him early on. but it didn't cost them games. He didn't have that much pressure on him. It wasn't impacted the win and loss record that much because they had guys like Gunnar Henderson, superstar, Adley Rutschman, star level player, Anthony Santander had a star level season. And so it kind of embraced, it made the transition for Holiday and his growing pains early on, not that big of a deal. You could still win anyway when your core guys are at that level. And so are the Cubs guys at that level? Are their core guys at that level? Well, they're good enough where, hey, if Ballesteros comes up for a month and he bats, 170 to start out, it doesn't hurt the team that much because Bellinger has a huge month or Seiya has a huge month. And ultimately for this to work, some of these veteran guys are just going to have to take a step forward if that's the path the Cubs decide. If they open up a spot for Owen Casey, you're going to need a guy like Seiya who's really good. He's a really good offensive player, but having one really good offensive player is not good enough. You're going to need Ian Happ. Ian Happ had a good year last year, but if you're going to develop young players, if you're going to develop and have to be patient and go through the growing pains with young talent, you can't have one of your best players bat 245. You just can't. It has to be better than that. Teams like the Dodgers, they can get away with, bringing up young talent, and they have Betts, Ohtani, and Freeman. If those guys are healthy, they're gonna carry them. They're gonna carry them. You look at other sports like the 2022 Warriors are the only NBA team that I recall that was really developing young talent and won a championship at the same time. Well, they had Steph Curry. They had a championship nucleus to be patient for their young guys. And it didn't even work for a lot of their young guys. They had like James Wiseman and all these things that they're not even on the team anymore, but they still were able to win a championship because their nucleus, their core was that strong. And so, the first way to have success with this, the first way to make this work is if you are able to find a way to be able to be patient with your young players, let them go through their ups and downs. But because guys like Suzuki, guys like Bellinger, guys like Happ, guys like Dansby take a step forward. So instead of just being nice players, they become really, really good players, or maybe in Suzuki's case, really good to a star. So you get to increase your margin of error when those guys struggle. Because last year we saw it. When the top level guys, when the core group of veterans, and I use core in quotes because I don't really know if this team's a core yet. I don't think you get that name until you win more than 83 wins, when you win more than 83 games. They struggled in May and June. And then PCA and Amaya, they were just going through what young players go through, which is ups and downs, and you have some really bad months, but it stuck out so much because the leaders of the team, the guys that you depend on to be really, really good, weren't good enough. So this two timeline thing, the first way it can work is if, whether it's externally, we go get a veteran bat, or the guys that we currently have now take a step forward. But there is another way. There is another way, and let's rewind to 2015 because we've seen this work before. And I think it's kind of unfair to Jed. I think it's kind of unfair to the Cubs players to have this expectation because it's not supposed to work as smoothly as it did back in 2015, 2016. The Cubs had great veteran players in 2015-16. Like Rizzo at that point is better than any Cub player currently. Rizzo was like a top 5 MVP guy in 16 and 17 and whatnot. So they were coming in. You had the Ben Zobrist of the world. You were coming in, Fowler, to a good group of core players. However, the guys that were coming up, the Chris Bryant of the world, did not need to go through any growing pains. He did not need to go through many ups and downs. He came up in 2015. He won Rookie of the Year right away. 2016, he won the MVP. Chris Bryant was the missing piece to that Cubs team. And so instead of trying to increase your margin of error by having all these great veterans, you just increase your margin of error because you had a guy that was so great and so ready to perform right away. That is what took you to the next step. And if the Cubs want to go that path, I believe there's one guy in their system that at least has the capabilities or the potential to be that guy. And we're going to talk about him coming up next. This episode is brought to you by Select Quote, the World Series, Super Bowl, the Olympics, the world's top athletes get to play in these top level sporting events thanks to one thing: teamwork. And teamwork can also protect your financial legacy and your family's future. Select Quote's licensed insurance agents are the perfect teammates when shopping for customized, affordable life insurance. They could find you the right policy to keep your financial legacy safely in your family's end zone. In sports, winning is everything. That's why you always need a good strategy to keep you moving towards the goalposts. Winning strategies for life are just as important. That's why you should have life insurance through Select Quote to protect your legacy and your family's financial future. Other life insurance brokers offer impersonal, one-size-fits-all policies that may cost you more and cover you less, while Select Quote's licensed insurance agents work for you to tailor a life insurance policy for your individual needs in as little as 15 minutes. Get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/locked-on. Go to selectquote.com/locked-on today to get started. That's selectquote.com/locked-on. We are back here on Locked On Cubs. And if the Cubs are going to do this two timeline thing, if the Cubs are going to say, hey, we got a young group of guys that we're trying to develop, and we also got our older guys and we're trying to win now, they either need one of their veteran guys to step forward, or maybe one of these young guys just is really, really good right away. And Jed has told us how many times, at least 5 times in his postseason press conference, he talked about outperforming projections. And, next year, Seiya Suzuki is going to be projected to be what? Maybe like an 840, 850 OPS guy. He'll be the highest. Happ will be in the high sevens. Bush will be in the mid to high sevens. So where's the path? If this is all assuming the Cubs don't make a big blockbuster move. Like I said, I'm just going back to the analogy at the beginning of the show. Let's assume we're working with the B team. We're trying to make the best of what we have. Where's the path to outperform projections? And I believe one of the best paths to take is Matt Shaw. And I don't want to sit here and put the pressure on him and the expectation that he has to be this great, because odds are he won't be. But I said this, I've been hinting it on the show this week. I do believe that Matt Shaw has the ability to come in here and be one of the Cubs' top hitters. And that would be a great example of outperforming projections, because no projections, no computers are going to have that. And if the Cubs want to take that jump from being an 83, 84 win team, maybe it's, having a guy like Matt Shaw. Can he be worth, 2 or 3 extra wins to the table, whether he's replacing a Nico Horner, whether he's DHing, whatever he's doing? Can he come in and hit 280 with a 340 on base and a 500 slug and be an 840 OPS guy right away? Because look, we know the Cubs don't have that superstar guy, and it's a bunch of nice players, whatever. The one way without adding just a 1,000 OPS guy that they could really increase winning is just have guys just be like, get to that mid 800 OPS level. Do you know what I mean? Like last year we had Seiya. Happ, like as much as we talk about Happ, he wasn't even an 800 OPS guy last year, nor was Bush. So if we could get another guy in that mid 8 category, and then maybe Happ improves a little bit, Bush improves a little bit, whatever it is, now at least you have you could say you have a core group of guys that are really, really hitting. And I believe Matt Shaw has the ability to do that. I think it's unfair to expect it out of him, but what I'm trying to do is just create a path, create a B team of an expectation to get you excited for. And I think Matt Shaw is one of the best ways. Now, why do I think that? And this is probably the toughest part of this episode. I could sit here and talk about his numbers last year. I have him right in front of me. He was unbelievably good in Iowa in a 35-game sample. He slashed 298, 395, 534, the 929. He got off to that really slow start in Double-A and then totally turned it around there, finished Double-A with an 841 OPS. He's hit at every single level he's ever been at, starting with college to now. But with Matt Shaw, it's an eye test thing for me. I fell in love with Matt Shaw and his offensive prowess really in spring training last year. Like I already knew he was really good. I was already really high on him, but just watching his approach, watching the way that he hit in spring training, and he didn't even have that great of a of a spring training statistically, but the eye test just screamed out, this dude is a hitter. This dude rakes. This guy wants to drive in runs. He looks to hit the ball hard, but he's patient. He takes his walks. He strikes out a bit, but that's expected at his age. And I just think if there's a young prospect on this team that may not have to go through a huge learning curve at the big league level, like say PCA did, I believe it's Matt Shaw. And Matt Shaw is such a unique prospect. He's in most publications he's looked at as like between top 20 and top 25 prospect in baseball, which is really, really awesome. But it's not, hey, Sam, you're talking about this guy, you're comparing it to Chris Bryant. Chris Bryant was a unanimous top prospect. And I know I'm not comparing it to Chris Bryant in a way where I expect the same thing. I'm just saying that that's also a different avenue. Having a minor league player come up and be really good right away. So why do you think a top 20, 25 prospect can do that right away? And I'll tell you, sometimes these prospect rankings, they're very into specific tools like PCA. PCA is your classic blue chip prospect because he has such loud tools. His speed is unmatchable. He also, with his speed, his defense is at a high level prospect wise as it could be, and he can hit the ball in the upper deck at Marlin Stadium the day after he hits an inside the park home run. Like his tools just pop off the screen. Shaw's a little bit different. Shaw's more just really, really good everywhere offensively. His power, really good. He's got bat to ball skills. He's got a really good eye. He can go the other way. So I don't know if he might be the type of guy that doesn't get fully appreciated as a prospect until he comes up at the big league level, because he doesn't have one trait that's just super loud. Oh my gosh, can't miss power. Oh my gosh, can't miss hit tool. Oh my gosh, can't miss speed. But they're all just really, really good attributes. And that's why I think Matt Shaw might surprise people around the league. And I think the Cubs have to do their best to find a way to make room for him on day one in Japan in March when they open the season against the Dodgers. And, we're going to talk about all these different paths to the Cubs having a 90-win team. The easiest path would just be if they just went out and got better players, spent money, made a big trade, got an offensive hub, as I like to say, that they could just build their offense around. So they could say, hey, Matt Shaw, you hit 191 in May. Don't worry about it. This player that we had, he picked up the slack. He batted 350, or say it batted 340 and slugged 11 homers that month. And so they're going to pick up the slack when you struggle. That's the easiest. That's what big market teams do. They don't leave it up to the projections. But this is what we have. And there is a possibility that we do. And this is obviously just a strictly offensive video. We're not talking as much about pitchers and things like that. I'm just talking building an offense. But the other way to do this, the other way to have success is if, of course, one of the veterans outperforms projections that you already have, where you bring up a guy like Matt Shaw that just has a Jackson Merrill type season, wins Rookie of the Year, has an OPS in the mid eights, and is not only a nice piece for the Cubs, but helps them, he is one of the offensive hubs. He's one of the carriers of the team. It's rare, but it can happen. And I'm not saying expect it to happen, but if there's one guy in this system that it can happen with, it's Matt Shaw. So maybe, just maybe, Matt Shaw could be the missing piece that we are looking for this offense. And Jed ultimately will get what he wants, which is developing young players, seeing the fruits of his labor, and solving I need to win now at the major league level with one player. It's unlikely, but it's not impossible, and Matt Shaw could be that guy. Coming up next, we're going to talk about our best and worst of the week. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL and NBA action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I haven't given out a pick on this show in a while, but I'm going to give you one. If you're out of state, Illinois football -2.5 right now on FanDuel. I've seen it at 2, and it's bouncing back between 2.5 and 3 on FanDuel. If you can get that at 2.5, I think Illinois beats Michigan State at home coming off a bye. And if they don't, what a really disappointing end to their season. They should be able to come back after a bye and salvage and figure out a way to beat Michigan State by more than a field goal. I like that game. Bears, we've talked about Bears Packers. It's a stay away for me. The Bulls went into Madison Square Garden last night and upset the Knicks. I didn't have that on my gambling radar. Just visit fanduel.com to join today. Remember, it's America's #1 sports book. Welcome back here on Locked On Cubs. And as we like to do on our Friday episodes, we're going to close the show with our best and worst of the week. I'll start with my best of the week. And it's kind of a best/worst because I don't like when time flies. Life's short. I like to enjoy it. But man, this offseason is flying by. I mean, Thanksgiving is just a couple of weeks away. And before you know it, we're going to be at the winter meeting. Before you know it, catchers and pitchers are going to report. And before you know it, at 5 a.m., I'm going to be in front of this computer in this very spot doing a watch along on opening day for the Cubs and Dodgers. And I think the Bears being I'm going to use the word as embarrassing as they've been. The Bulls are pretty much irrelevant. Even if you want to watch them, it's a real struggle. It's kind of just making it, we're getting back to the Cubs. It's like the Cubs are benefiting from the fact that the rest of the city's sports teams are really bad. And before you know it, we're getting there. And this offseason, I'm really enjoying the episodes that we're doing. They feel really meaningful and fun to do, and the research that we're putting in. It's been a really nice offseason so far. And I do think, as I said last week, that there are fireworks coming. I don't know how much of them are going to be with the Cubs, but it's not going to be like last offseason. I mean, you're hearing things, and, the Angels already made a splash, signing Darno when they have a great catcher. I struggle to find what that organization's trying to accomplish, but that's my best of the week. Just this offseason, it just feels like it just feels like the offseason now is almost part of the season, and it's fun, and I'm enjoying it. And I always say to myself, when the season's over, oh man, what are we going to do now? And October's tough. That playoff month's tough. But this month of November, it's been fun. It's been fun talking about different trades, looking at different content. Plenty of outlets. Like everyone's doing a really good job this offseason, and it's been fun to cover. My worst of the week is an easy one, and it's not anything to do with the Cubs, so forgive me. This Mike Tyson, Jake Paul thing that's going to happen tonight, it's just not right. It's just not. You guys know me by now. You know how much I respect sports and respect legends of sport. And Mike Tyson qualifies for that. I mean, at one time in the mid to late 80s, there's probably no bigger sports star on the planet. And the way Jake Paul's talking to him in these press conferences and the taunting, it just rubs me the wrong way. And then they're all going to make a bunch of money off of it. I don't like it. I just don't like it. And, I know there's going to be a bunch of people there, and it's on Netflix, and it's great. And if I'm home tonight, I'll probably watch it. I just don't like it. I just don't. I just want to respect. If Jake Paul wants to box other guys, UFC guys, but not a guy like Mike Tyson. That's like, and I hope Tyson wins, but like, that's like, to me, like, having like a young, 20-something really good, like street ball player, that's really good playing at the park or something, that challenges like Michael Jordan to a one-on-one game, and maybe he beats him, maybe he doesn't. So what? I don't want to watch Michael Jordan in that light. I want to think about Michael Jordan flying through the air with his tongue out, switching hands and those things. I just don't like it. So that's where I'm at with that. Really fun episode today. Matt Shaw. Can Matt Shaw be a guy that increases the Cubs' margin of error, that makes this 2-timeline thing work, because he's just so good that he doesn't go through the typical struggles like a PCA did early on, or, like an Amaya, or maybe another guy does. It's going to be tough. It's a tough ask of him, and I'm not expecting it. I'm not putting the pressure on him, but it's one of the pathways. It's one of the avenues for the Cubs to be able to develop young players and try and win at the same time if they're not going to go out and get a superstar player. Thank you so much for checking out this edition of Locked On Cubs. You give us 20 to 30 minutes, and we'll give you all things Cubs with a laugh or two along the way. Be sure to subscribe on YouTube, smash the like button for the algorithm, and leave a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, and everywhere you get your podcasts. I'm Sam Olber, and this is Locked On Cubs.